Okay, out there in Marvel-land, face front, this is Stan Lee speaking. You've probably never heard a record like this before because no one would be nutty enough to make one with a bunch of offbeat artists, so anything is liable to happen.
Hey, who made you a disc jockey, Lee?
Well, Jolly Jack Kirby, say a few words to the fans, Jackson.
Okay, a few words.
Look, pal, I'll take care of the humor around here.
You've been using the same gags over and over for years.
Well, you can't accuse me of being fickle, can you? By the way, Jack, the readers have been complaining about Sue's hairdo again.
What am I supposed to do? Be a hairdresser? Next time I'll draw her bald-headed.
Boy, I'm glad we caught you when you were in a good mood.
Oh, Stan, do you have a few minutes?
For our fabulous Gal Friday? Sure. Say hello to the fans, Flo Steinberg.
Hello, fans. It's very nice to meet you. As Marvel's corresponding secretary, I feel as though I know most of you from your letters. By the way, Saul Brodsky wants to say a few words.
Saul Brodsky? Who's he?
Stan, the fans know you have a bad memory by all the mistakes you make, but this is ridiculous. He's been your associate for years.
Really? We ought to start paying him one of these days.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. And how come I don't get my name plastered all over the mags like you do?
Because I can't spell it, that's why.
Well, as long as you've got a good reason.
Hey, what's all that commotion out there, Saul?
Why, it's Shy Steve Ditko. He heard you're making a record and he's got mic fright. Whoops, there he goes.
Out the window again? You know, I'm beginning to think he is Spider-Man.
You mean he isn't?
Who said that?
Just that lovable old letter of me.
It's adorable Artie Simic. What brought you here?
The subway.
Oh, well, ask a bonehead question, Flo.
Stan, Sam Rosen is on the phone.
How are the letterer? My competitor?
Just for fun, Artie, you talk to him.
Hi, Sam. This is Artie. How's it going, pal?
Just great, Artie. I sure admire your lettering.
I admire yours too, Sam. I think you're tops.
Thanks. Well, nice talking to you.
The pleasure was all mine.
I never could stand that guy.
Well, that's our Artie. Just imagine what Sam is saying about him now. Well, let's see who else we can get on this record.
How about Chick Stone?
Okay. Hi, Chick. How's Tricks?
Fine, Stan. I'm reading the latest story. It's great. What a thriller.
Now, that's what we like to hear, Chick. Which one of our comics is it?
Who's reading a comic? This is a novel about James Bond. I can't wait to finish it.
Well, we're going to miss Chick around here.
Oh, look who just came in. Kid Daredevil himself, Wally Wood.
Is that a tape recorder, Flo? You know I'm afraid to talk into these machines. I can never think of anything to say. I'm not a big talker. I shut up like a clam. I get struck dumb. My mind goes blank.
Okay. Forget it. Boy, I'd hate to hear you when you feel like talking.
Stan, Dick Ears is on the phone.
Let's surprise him.
Hi, Dick. We have a recorder playing, and you're talking to millions of people right now.
You some kind of nut or something? I just want to tell you I want a raise.
Dick, don't you understand? People are listening. You're talking to the whole world.
I always knew you'd crack someday, Lee. Just my luck, it had to happen when I asked you for some more dough. Well, I'm going back to Sergeant Fury. Goodbye.
Another phone call for you, Stan.
Oh, not anymore. I'm getting an earache.
But it's Don Heck.
The idol of the Iron Man fans? The ace of the Avengers? Hi, Don. What's doing?
Stan, I was just wondering, wasn't I supposed to draw Iron Man last week?
Sure. Why do you ask?
So how come you mailed me a Patsy Walker script?
Yipe! Did I do that? That's awful.
Oh, well, don't worry. I'll send it back to you.
That's not why I'm worried. I must have sent your script to Al Hartley. I can just imagine Iron Man looking like Patsy Walker this issue. Okay, talk to you later, Don.
Don't worry about it, Stan. Don't you remember that Al Hartley used to draw adventure strips? It may not be too bad.
Well, look who's here. Stan G., our demon colorer. I've been meaning to talk to you, Stan. When are you going to remember it's the Hulk who has green skin, not Captain America?
Gee whiz, the guy can't remember everything. Anyway, I had to tell you what MMMS meant last week, and you're the guy who made it up.
But when I forget something, it's different.
Yeah, it's worse.
Stan, this is the most confused record I ever heard.
Great, Sol. Just what we want. If it were anything else, it wouldn't be the Nutty Marvel bullpen.
Gosh, we don't have time for George Bell and Vince Colletter and Larry Lieber and Bob Powell and...
That's great. Now, if we ever form another club, we'll have something new to offer. Voices that haven't been heard yet.
Enough said, Sol. Now, let's all get back to work in the bullpen. And as for you, marvelous, merry marchers, welcome from all of us to all of you. If you want to know how glad we are to have you with us, just you listen. Okay, let 'em hear it, gang. Whoa!
Face front, true believers. You're listening to the Marvel Saga, Episode 7. I'm Nicholas Prom.
And I'm Jerry McMullen. Each month, with each issue, we look at the Silver Age of the Marvel Comics, telling the story in chronological order. So we are seeing the early days of the Fantastic Four, Thor, Iron Man, the Spider-Man, the Hulk, and so many others. I am part of the Worst Comic Podcast Ever, and Nicholas, you do
Comic Reflections, podcast focused on the Silver and Bronze Ages of comic books.
There you go.
Yeah,
all right.
It's all right.
You're coming up on your episode number 300.
That's right.
So
it should. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it should. It should drop maybe a day or so after this episode. So right. Yeah. Very exciting stuff. It's hard to believe. 5 years has kind of flown with it, but yeah, it's.
You make it part of your weekly routine, and you don't even really realize how long you've been doing it until you start looking at the numbers. And
yeah.
Realize the volume of work that you've put together.
Yeah, and I don't realize how much I've learned doing the show until I go back and listen to old episodes and how bad they are. You know, just the craft has just been a thing that I've learned bit by bit, and just to try done everything I've done, try to get a little better, and all the time, and yeah, it's been a process, but it's been fun.
We've often joked that we would like to go back and redo some of our early episodes, knowing now what we didn't know back then.
Right. I think the Worst Comic Podcast Ever is highly listenable now. It's very good. But yeah, time goes by and you learn what works and what doesn't, and yeah. But this is maybe too inside baseball. But before we get into our issue today, we had a couple of notable passings that are definitely related to this show.
Well, the first up, and the one that I think is most important to focus on, is the passing of Flo Steinberg, who passed away on the Sunday of San Diego Comic-Con.
Right.
And for those that aren't familiar with Flo, she was Stan Lee's Gal Friday in the early days of Marvel Comics in the Silver Age. She was like the secretary and correspondence, and worked with the freelancers. And there was a period there in the early days of the 1960s where the only two employees of Marvel Comics were Stan Lee and Flo Steinberg.
Right, and then it was just freelance artists.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, when I got that news, I kid you not. I mean, I cried hard, real tears. I mean, yes. ugly cry. Snot running down my nose. Like, this lady really meant a lot to that period of comic books, and she's a big part of this history.
Yes. And she's even bigger to just Marvel Comics. She was a big figure within comics, because after she left Marvel, and she left Marvel in like 68 because she couldn't get a raise.
Really?
Yeah. Martin Goodman wouldn't approve a raise for her.
Oh, man. Well, he was gone in a couple years after that anyway.
Yeah. But in the mid-1970s, she started the Underground Comics, the New York Underground Comics there.
Oh, yeah, Big Apple Comics.
Big Apple Comics. And she brought in a lot of the Marvel artists that she had dealings with, guys like Wally Wood and Neil Adams and so many others. And successfully, she was editing that book at that point.
Yeah.
She's been a mainstay in comics. She actually went back to Marvel for a while and did proofreading and editing and other work for them. And she was always a mainstay at the different Comic-Cons. And just seeing her influence within comics, if you look, and we haven't quite gotten to it yet in Marvel Saga, but in the early Amazing Spider-Man, Flo was the model for Betty Brant.
Really? See,
if
I
you
didn't
look
know.
at
Oh my
Eddie Grant
gosh.
and you look at pictures of Flo from that same period, they're one and the same.
Oh my gosh, it didn't even occur to me. You know, it's funny, I know it's not her voice, but even the Betty Brant on the classic Spider-Man cartoon from the 60s kind of sounds like Flo.
Exactly. And then in the mid-'70s, when Kirby had come back to Marvel, he did an issue of What If.
Yes.
11, I think it was, where what if the Marvel bullpen had become the Fantastic Four? So
Yeah, and it's Stan and Jack, Flo, and Saul, not Saul Harrison. Sorry, that's DC.
Brodsky.
Yeah, that's right, Saul Brodsky. And Saul Brodsky, there was a guy who was so behind the scenes at Marvel. He doesn't get brought up enough. But do you remember that tribute they gave to him in the Marvel Age fan magazine in the 80s? Great. A lot of insight into really how important that guy was.
He kept the trains running.
Oh, yeah. Much like John Verpoorten did in the 70s. Who, didn't he die at his desk? Didn't they found him dead the next day at work? Yeah. But John Verpoorten would make sure people got paid. He'd hop in and ink pages when they needed to be done. He got stuff to the engravers on time. He was super important. But we can talk about deceased Marvelites until the cows come home, sadly. But also of note, a couple weeks before Flo, Joan Lee, wife of Stan Lee, passed away. She was in her early 90s. They had been married almost 70 years.
Yes. Incredible. I mean, when you heard the stories about their first meeting, it was actually Stan was supposed to go on a date with one of her friends.
Right.
And the friend didn't show up, and Joan was there, and so they went out, and within weeks they were married, and to some degree, they lived happily ever after. I mean, like any couple, I'm sure they had their issues, but she was always very supportive of Stan and his projects. And, you know, she was the one that helped encourage Stan to do Fantastic Four #1. You know, if this is going to be your last comic, do the comic you want to do.
Right. I mean, and while Stan and his level of contribution to comics is controversial with many people, it's impossible. It's unfathomable to think, what if he had quit comics at that time? I mean, he's still a tremendous figure, regardless of how much credit you want to give him for creation of characters. And as he's been the ambassador for comics, you know, from the 60s forward, and I think regardless of how you feel about him, it's really hard to deny his importance, which is tremendous, really. But R.I.P. Fabulous Flo, and of course Joan Lee, two wonderful ladies who, in one way or another, really were foundational in the comic book. Trailing off because I don't have my words.
Within the comic book universe.
There we go.
They provided the support to help others do their things, as well as they made their own contributions in different ways.
Very good. Sorry, gang. It's been a long week.
It's not fun. That's not fun. Well, before we get to talking about issue 7, we had some feedback from issue 6.
Oh.
Our last episode. Let me bring up that message here. This came from the Irredeemable Shag.
Oh, yes.
We love getting his messages.
I enjoy Shag so much.
Another great episode, guys. Really enjoyed your walk through this issue. Interesting discussion on diversity and discrimination and the X-Men's original lack of diversity. Hadn't thought of that. The piece I walked away with mostly was how similar Iron Man's origin, as presented here, resembles what we got in the first film, almost beat for beat, at least the way you guys described it. well done, Marvel Studios, on that film. Looking forward to the next episode.
Well, thanks very much, Shag. Looking forward to all of your contributions on the Fire and Water Podcast Network. Folks, if you don't listen to those shows, you're really missing out. There's a lot of great stuff there.
Absolutely. And Iron Man has definitely been the one film franchise, well, that and I would say Captain America, that the origins remain true to the comics.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Hulk, you can't really do a bomb going off, and I get it. If they'd have tried to do the Fantastic Four in the MCU, I think they would have to do something different. Yeah. Maybe like what they did in the most recent FF movie, but not so clumsily. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, because their original origin is so laughable. And I think we've talked about that. But yeah. Thor, I think it was good to not have Don Blake. Dispensing with secret identities is really good, especially for movies. Exactly. But yeah, good times with those movies. And I think once Iron Man was a hit, the sky was the limit, because, like, who knows Iron Man besides comic book fans, really? Yeah. They might know the name, you know? But yeah.
Iron Man really solidified Marvel Studios as a concept and a creation that, you know, for years Marvel had been trying to sell these characters as film franchises, and no one was biting at them. No one wanted those characters.
Yeah.
There was a reason why Spider-Man and FF and X-Men had been sold, because there was interest in them. No one wanted to do Captain America or Iron Man. The Hulk movies, Hulk had been tried before and hadn't done that well. And so Marvel Studios said, hey, if we're going to do these, maybe we have to do them ourselves. And
yeah. I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
It's worked out swimmingly.
Well, you know, it's every time there's a new Marvel movie getting ready to come out, the running tagline is this going to be the one that really tanks? Is this going to be the one that breaks their record? And each one keeps succeeding to different levels.
Right. I mean, I think people like Iron Man 2 and Thor 2 less, although I found them perfectly enjoyable. Yeah. You know, I don't think I'll be going to watch Doctor Strange again and again. But, I mean, they've all been really fun.
Yeah.
And they've been quality movies. They've got a winning formula that I think goes on for, hopefully goes on for years and years.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into Marvel Saga number 7 here.
Yeah.
Where we're looking at late 63, I think.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. The Marvel Saga number 7 was cover dated June of 1986, but according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it went on sale March 4th, 1986. Cover art, or this great wraparound cover art, as per usual, penciled by Brent Anderson and inked by the great Al Williamson, who in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, he had come back to Marvel and he did tons and tons of inking work. Good on you, Marvel, for giving an aging comics legend steady work.
Yeah, I first came across Williamson's work when he inked the Empire Strikes Back adaptation.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with Al Williamson. And I'm a big fan of Brent Anderson. I love his work currently on Astro City. I just got a bound edition. He did the early issues of Strike Force Morituri.
Really? I've never read that. I haven't read the New Universe stuff at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I did pick up a few issues, not of that series, but of I can't remember exactly what. Recently, I'm like, I need to give this a shot.
Yeah, there was some good stuff there. All right. Well, this issue picks up where we left off last time, in the middle of Iron Man's origin. Professor Ho Jensen has just sacrificed his life to give Tony time to finish getting the Iron Man armor ready to go. And so he's Again, he's in Southeast Asia. It's kind of inferred that it's Vietnam, but they don't ever quite come out and say that it's Vietnam.
Right.
And so he'd been captured. He'd been wounded. He had a piece of shrapnel that had gotten into his chest and was actually working its way towards his heart. And so he needed this, chest unit to kind of keep the metal from getting to his heart. It was kind of acting like a magnet or something.
Right.
And so they just finished building a whole suit around it. So he was literally becoming an Iron Man. And so once the professor has given Tony the time to finish up, he starts trying to move around in it very clumsily, because again, it's a suit of iron. It's not exactly designed for speed or mobility. It's just designed to get him around, but he figures out how to move it. And he comes into contact with the leader of this country and their forces, and they start attacking him. And bullets are bouncing off the armor, and the armor is giving Tony increased strength to where he can pick up the leader and throw him around and causing him great embarrassment. And they keep trying to stop him any way they can, whether it's guns, whether it's office furniture. To throw at this guy, we're going to do it because we can't let this man in the iron suit get away. So
right.
But Tony finally does. He blows up the compound on his way out, and somehow comes across a trench coat and coat and hat, because that was the common wardrobe whenever a superhero or villain wants to go undercover. You put on a trench coat and a fedora. So
right. I'm just thinking about the trench coat that would fit over this armor. And the hat.
Yeah. Apparently the same store that Ben Grimm gets his from, they've got a branch there in Southeast Asia. So Tony goes walking into the jungle, hoping to get out of there somehow. And this is a little bit of one of the first revisions to Iron Man's origin. He comes across a U.S. Army soldier by the name of Jim Rhodes, whose helicopter has gone down, and he's trying to make repairs. And Jim Rhodes sees this armored guy coming out of the jungle and immediately thinks that it's a threat, so he tries attacking him and realizes, hey, bullets don't work on this guy. And Tony keeps saying, hey, I'm American, don't shoot, we're the same side here. And
right
about that time, the Viet Cong come along, and they start attacking Iron Man and Jim Rhodes, and Iron Man does his best to stop them, giving Jim time to get to cover, and they eventually follow that squad back to their base, where they find a working helicopter that Jim can get them out of there with, and they blow up that base as well on their way out. And Jim flies them back into safe territory. He drops Iron Man off early before he returns to the base. And Tony Stark realizes, hey, I'm going to be in this armor for a while, but maybe I can do something with this armor, make my life mean something, rather than just trying to build more and more weapons. And but before he leaves Southeast Asia, he tracks down Jim Rhodes, who's been in the hospital recovering from his wounds from the battle. And Tony Stark goes up to Jim Rhodes and offers him a job whenever he gets done with the military, which Rhodes would take him up on. He would become his personal pilot for many years. And then during one of the bouts of alcoholism that Tony Stark would go through, Jim Rhodes ended up taking on the Iron Man armor and being Iron Man for a while. He was Iron Man during the original Secret Wars.
Right.
And he now goes by War Machine, wearing a variation of the Iron Man armor.
Yeah. What I thought was really fun about this is how Rhodey talks like Jim Kelly.
Yeah.
He's totally written in kind of like a blaxploitation hero, like Fred Williamson in Nam. But I'm totally into it. I like it. And of course, he grows as a character and everything. But I like that choice. But yeah, we wrap up here with Iron Man for now, and we check in with Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. He's having some solo adventures, and here he stumbles across disappearing aliens near a swamp or something, and he stumbles upon what has got to be some kind of plot, and he is taken captive and transported to another dimension where these aliens live, and its place is run by this guy named Zemu. Okay, and Zemu's plan is they're building an army, and they're preparing to invade our dimension and conquer the Earth. Because I've never heard anybody do that before.
Only like once a month in Marvel Comics.
Right, once, more like half a dozen times. But but Johnny is captured. He's placed in a tank of liquid where he can't flame on. But there is a sympathetic gal amongst these alien folks, and she rescues him, and then he leads the people who are oppressed by Zemu in a revolution. and so Zemu's plans of conquest are thwarted, the people are liberated, and I guess Johnny comes back to the Earth. Yeah.
I give them credit. At least they didn't have like an asbestos gun or something. They dunked him in water to kind of keep his powers at bay there.
Oh man, asbestos gun. But yes, so then we move on to a scientist named Elias Starr, better known as Egghead.
Oh yes, my favorite Ant-Man villain.
Are there other Ant-Man villains?
No?
I'm teasing, of course. There are. So Egghead is a would-be traitor to America. He only cares about his science. He doesn't care about patriotism, and so he's ready to sell atomic secrets to the Reds, I would assume. He gets drummed out of science and government work, so he's approached by mobsters to work for them and eliminate Ant-Man, because Ant-Man's been causing problems for organized crime. I love Ant-Man. His head is huge and bulbous and bald.
Yeah.
And he's got Ben Franklin glasses. He's really wild looking. But he comes up with a device that will, change the wavelength of the ants that Ant-Man controls?
Yeah, he's trying to find a way to communicate with them and take over them so Ant-Man doesn't have this army of troops available for him to work with.
Right. So he lays a trap for Ant-Man, and he does capture him, but his plan foils because reasons? I didn't really understand what Ant-Man did to stop him.
Reading back on some of these stories, and this is always my biggest issue with any of the heroes that shrink so much, whether it's Ant-Man, whether it's Atom, that they spend all their time shrunk down. It's like, wouldn't you spend more time just in your normal size?
Right.
All this stuff. There are certainly disadvantages to being ant size the entire time.
Yeah.
And you see in this panel where he throws Ant-Man into a box. He could just as easily embiggen himself and get out of the box.
Right.
It's not like the box is going to be that foolproof to keep Ant-Man in there.
Right. It's like a wood box. He could break this if he grew. Yeah. But Ant-Man defeats Egghead and the mobsters, and they all go to jail. And Egghead's ego is crushed, and we wonder if he's going to come back, but of course he will.
Yeah.
Coming soon, Fortress of Smallitude, the Ant-Man Atom podcast.
Well, and Egghead, to his credit, I mean, there was a big storyline in the early 1980s in the Avengers where it was the downfall of Hank Pym, and it was all masterminded by Egghead. Where he blackmailed him into trying to get Henry Pym to steal government documents from Strategic Air Command, and the Avengers had to stop him. It was after the infamous slap of Jan.
Right.
Moment, and Pym had to go on trial for treason.
Yeah.
And the Avengers and everyone eventually realized that he had been set up. They tracked down Egghead and stopped it, and Pym was able to go free. But that was right around the time that I first got into Avengers, and because of that, Egghead has a special fondness for me.
I totally understand. I definitely have characters like that. That for me that are like, no, they really are lame, but I have just a real fondness for them. Now, was that when Egghead showed up with the Emissaries of Evil? His team of villains?
That was much earlier, I believe.
Oh, was it? Okay. Sorry. Well, never mind then. I'm trying to remember who was even in that group, but it doesn't matter. So we then check in on Dr. Donald Blake, who is a crippled and lame physician, in case anyone had forgotten. But he gets a plan to. There are problems. He's heard on the news that there are scientists / doctors who have defected to the Soviet Union, and Donald Blake gets the idea, I got to investigate this and figure out why. So he dreams up the idea of, I will use myself as bait. Say I've developed this germ warfare or biological warfare, and so that the commies will come for him, and then he can infiltrate and figure out what's going on. Instead of just coming and making him an offer, they capture him. And so he's taken to the Soviet Union, and of course he's imprisoned with other scientists. But he becomes Thor and then starts kicking commie butt.
It's funny how, knowing Thor like we know him now, you don't think he would necessarily get involved in political issues between countries.
No, and I would think,
of comics in the 1960s, everything was predicated around the U.S. and Russia and the Cold War, and let's use our heroes to help in the fight against the Cold War without actually making any substantial changes to the status quo.
Right, and you're right. It's weird for Thor to get into anything political because he's a character from mythology, and his sensibilities are not those of people of Midgards. It's Thor. It's really black and white, epic battles against villainy or in the unjust or protecting people. Those kinds of things. It's just a general vague good deediness. I mean, to get into things that are have so much nuance like politics is strange business. So it makes for very weird comics, but this is fun.
Yeah.
So Thor somehow was captured and imprisoned in these chains, but since he's not touching the hammer, Mjolnir, a minute passes, and of course he reverts back to Don Blake, wherein he's easily able to slip out of the chains and then touch the hammer again, turn back to Thor, and then he beats up the commies, rescues the scientists, and returns everyone back to America.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty fun.
And we also see a scene here where Loki has been watching, and he discovers that Thor has this dual identity now.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. Sorry for glossing over that.
No, but it's just in these early Thor issues, Loki appears almost every time, even if it's just one or two panels, just because they knew that it worked and they were going to keep going to that well as often as they needed to.
Sure.
So, all right. Well, next we're going to jump over to the Incredible Hulk.
Yay!
Who's again still down in New Mexico, and he still has access to that underground lab, funded off of his government salary, apparently. But this is at a time where Rick Jones kind of has some degree of control over the Hulk, but if he falls asleep, then the Hulk goes on his rampages, and Rick Jones like, I got to get some sleep. I got to be able to stop the Hulk. What can I do? Maybe I can try to turn him back into Banner by exposing him to more gamma rays.
Sure. What's the worst that could happen?
We're going to shoot gamma rays at him. And it does work in this instance, turns him back to Dr. Banner. And Banner immediately goes to work. He's like, all right, maybe if I just fidget with this machine a little bit more, we can do something different. He does that. He turns back into the Hulk, but now he still retains the memories and knowledge of Dr. Banner while in the Hulk form. This is the first to see that. And, Hulk Banner is all excited that, he can use his mind and the body to do great things now.
And Rick says, man, that's the coolest. Which, I love it. I love that panel so much.
Yeah. And, again, he's remarking about how great it is to have a brain with the brute, and he immediately just starts showing off by picking up machinery. It's like, no, let's show you do something with the brain. But the problem is the Hulk has built up a reputation, and even when he goes out trying to help people, they're scared by his size and his look, and they know about his history, and he realizes it's going to be hard to be a hero as the Hulk, given everything that he's done so far.
Yeah. And so, the plot thickens.
I mean, at this point, it's only been 4 issues, so...
Right.
I mean, it's not like he's had a long career, but again, he realizes that the Hulk, the body of the Hulk is going to scare people, no matter how good his intentions are, with being Banner in control of the body.
Yeah.
So now we're going to switch over back to the Fantastic Four now, and this is one of my all-time favorite Silver Age stories. We're getting the start of it. The Fantastic Four has gone bankrupt by issue 9 of their own series.
I love it. It's one of my favorites too.
And so apparently Reed hasn't patented everything yet to start getting in the royalty money, and they got more bills than what they can pay, and they realize that bankruptcy is their only course of action. And the Thing immediately quits the team again, goes off in a huff. But this time, he now can go talk to Alicia Masters and kind of talks them down off the edge and says, hey, they're your friends, they're your family, give it time, work it out, be the hero, all that thing. So at the same time, the Fantastic Four get an offer from a Hollywood movie studio, SM Studios. And they want the Fantastic Four to come out and star in a big movie. And they're thinking, hey, this is great. We'll get all kinds of money for doing this job. But they need all 4 of us. And right then, Ben Grimm walks in and he's like, I'm back. I'm rejoining the team. We can go do this movie. And they get on site, but we're going to have to wait until next episode before we find out what happens with this movie opportunity.
Right. Now, at about this time, a despondent Peter Parker is in his bedroom / science lab, angry. Uncle Ben is dead, and it's his fault, basically. I mean, the guy who stole the payroll when Spidey was on TV, Spidey let him get away, and of course he later robbed Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and Uncle Ben was killed. Spidey, of course, tracked that guy down and swears he won't let anything like that happen again. But the immediate problems are, without Uncle Ben, there's no money coming in. So he's got to try and figure out ways to get cash. Does he, use his powers to commit crimes and then they'll be on an easy straight? And he says, no, that's not right. If I ever get caught, it would break Aunt May's heart. And plus, it's wrong. So he says, okay, well, I'll just go and I'll do more TV. But the problem is, he can't cash any checks because they're all made out to Spider-Man, and he's trying to keep a secret ID.
I love that panel. Spider-Man going to the bank, presenting the check to the teller, and I'd like to cash this check. I have to see some identification. What about the costume? Anyone could be wearing a Spider-Man costume.
Right. I love this bank teller, too. He's like perfectly, slight, nebbish looking, banker. It's great. So he says, okay, well, I guess I'll figure something out. But it sounds like the doing shows on television's no good anyway, because J. Jonah Jameson's starting writing nasty editorials about him.
J. Jonah Jameson, the publisher of the Daily Bugle.
That's right, the one and only. And so that's a problem. He says, yeah, this guy's a menace, taking law into his own hands. He's a bad influence on America's youth. Why can't they be more like my son, John Jameson, the test pilot, astronaut? Yeah, what a jerk. But at the same time, Peter stumbles across Aunt May pawning her jewelry to make the rent. And so Peter's angry again, seeing, what can he do? What can I do? Because he can't seem to find a job or anything. But we'll leave that plot detail dangle for a little while. John Jameson gets launched into outer space, but his space capsule, the control module or whatever, guidance gets knocked out, and the guys on ground control can't help. John Jameson can't control it. So it's up to Spidey to leap into action. He goes to talk to the military so-and-so and J. Jonah Jameson. And he says, look, give me this thing, the MacGuffin, that'll fix the guidance issues. I'll get it to the capsule. And so he heads out. He goes to the military/astronaut base, webs up a guard who's just going to slow him down, and he talks a pilot into flying him up in the air where Spidey is like walking on the outside of the plexiglass bubble. He says, all right, let's, catch up with that space capsule, and I guess I'm going to jump onto the capsule and figure this out. And that's where we're left off.
Again, on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, quite the cliffhanger.
Yeah, the one thing, I mean, in that particular era, 1963, that the astronauts really were heroes. I mean, that was during the Gemini and the Apollo era with, trying to get man into space, get man to the moon. So in many ways, they were the American heroes at the time. So J. Jonah Jameson making those claims, to some degree, were true for the time.
Yeah.
Minus the superheroes getting the credit. So
right.
But it's interesting to see, and looking forward to next issue. And I mean, it's just not going to be the second part of John Jameson's rescue, but we're also going to get the origin of Angel from the X-Men. We're going to see what happens to the Fantastic Four in Hollywood. Spider-Man is going to meet the Hulk for the first time. Iron Man gets a brand new armor, the first of many armor changes to come.
Oh, yes.
Plus, we're going to get Doctor Doom, Loki, Tyrannus, and so much more.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it, Jerry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess that about wraps up this episode. Where can folks find Jerry McMullen online?
look for the Worst Comic Podcast Ever. You can find us iTunes, Stitcher, any of your podcaster app channels. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of those. We do love to have conversations. You know, we had the message from Irredeemable Shag earlier. We'd love to get more feedback from you. If you like this episode, send us a note. Let us know what you think. Nicholas, where can people find you at?
Well, Comic Reflections is available on iTunes and Stitcher, and probably Google Play. I'm not sure. But I'm on Twitter at Comic Reflection with no S. And we have a Facebook page as well. Yeah, and an archive of nearly 300 episodes for fans of old comics to enjoy. So there's a lot of free content there just waiting for you, folks.
All right, excellent. Well, until next time, we will see you in the funny pages.
Yes, Excelsior!
Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, go forever greater, we can show you how to, and when will you be then? You'll belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, with the dour, sour outlook, if you howl, if you moan, you can lose your sour trust of keeping trim and in step with the vim and outstep of the Merry Marvel Marching Society.
Be an early riser,
strive to be ambitious,
speak a little wiser,
try to be judicious,
be a good advisor,
never ever vicious. And when will you be then?
Base front, lift your head, you're on the winning team.
You'll belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, and your score is nearly zero, do not howl, do not moan, you can be a superhero marching right along through the fighting song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, grow forever greater, we can show you how to